falls in life. We live and learn from our mistakes. The deepest cuts are healed by faith. Now I believe there comes a time when everything just falls in line. We live and learn from our mistakes. The deepest cuts are healed by faith. Now I believe there comes a time when everything just falls in line. We live and learn from our mistakes. The deepest cuts are healed by faith. Now I believe. Oh, fire up. Oh, fire up. Oh, fire up. Oh, fire up, fire up, fire up. Now I believe there comes a time when everything just falls in line. We live and learn from our mistakes. The deepest cuts are healed by faith.
You ready to go, Jen? Here we go.
Already.
Welcome to RenéMarie Stokeluk. I'm RenéMarie, and we always have a wonderful show because of Judy Marlowe. She does her work, and she calls me, and she's like so excited about each show. And thank you, Judy, so much for everything you do for each show. We've been doing this for 8 years, and our 8th annual telethon is coming up. I don't think I even told Jen, but Jen, we changed the date of the telethon. The 16th, October 16th,
Okay.
October 16th. And that was because of a personal matter I had on the back end. So we're really excited about our telethon. We're starting to gear up for that. We just did the talent night. Diane Bromberg and myself, she is extraordinary. My New Jersey, liaison. I mean, she just does everything. She's so incredible. Judy is in Long Island, and she does the work on the shows and the telethon with Ginny. And also Diane really has led the way in my New Jersey branch. So she is incredible. She's with Senior Resource Group of New Jersey. We want to show a slide that actually a little video from the show with Nate, who is a mime, who is really on our board of committees. And he really is an extraordinary individual. Nate and I connected because when you can't speak and you're expressing yourself, I really think that it really speaks volumes. In the silence, you can really hear what you need to hear, and the attention that is paid to him because he's not speaking, he's just expressing himself, is really a powerful way. He has a wonderful story that I recommend everybody read. I think it's what is it, Judy? Do you know the name of the Speak Mime? I'll find out and I'll let you know before the show ends. But I want Jim to run the video that I sang the Rose because he wanted to do it live. So this is a small portion of me singing the Rose and Nate doing his extraordinary mime work. Go ahead, Jim.
Who won't be taken, who cannot seem to live, and the soul afraid of dying that never learns to live. With the night
Wasn't that extraordinary?
Tonight, your body clock is 3 time zones ahead, so you're up.
Sorry.
Ready, Jim?
Yep.
So honestly, we'll share the post of the telethon. It really was an extraordinary evening. And Diane Bromberg, I can't thank you enough. And we're gearing up for our telethon, and I can't wait to share the moments with Judy and Ginny and Jim and everybody on our telethon. Is extraordinary. Before the talent show, Diana scheduled an interview for the Record, the North Jersey, newspaper. And Jim, can you put up the slide that I sent you? I just want to show you. This was a slide that they took, and it was very, very powerful for me because it was taken on me at the softball field where I had a stroke, right on the dugout where I had a stroke, and I was looking out on the field. And I've had so many wonderful moments since that article came out, because a lot of people have reached out to me because the story brought hope. And I want to thank Judy again, because that's why we do this show, to bring hope to people. And it really is important. Without hope, you don't have much. I just had I spoke to someone the other day, and they just said that their son had a stroke. And just at the moment that she read the story, that I recovered in a different road, a new pair of shoes, like Ilene and I were just talking about. But I brought them hope for the mom, because when you have a stroke, you don't know what's going to happen. So thank you so much for everybody and everything. The writer of the article, and the photographer, he was extraordinary. We had really wonderful conversations, and to Diane. So thank you so much to everybody. Jim, did you take it down, the photo? So, okay. So today we have a really important show. Ilene is really very passionate about her work. And as always, I'm going to let Judy begin the show by, Jim, could you put everybody on the screen? I'm going to let Judy start off with her press, because that'll lead us into the conversation that we're gonna hold. So Judy, go right ahead.
First, I'd like to welcome Ilene Corina to our show. Ms. Corina is a board-certified patient advocate and the president and founder of Pulse Center for Patient Safety Education and Advocacy. She was instrumental in getting New York State lawmakers to pass the landmark Patient Health Information and Quality Improvement Act of 2000, which called for the creation of a statewide health information system. Ilene Corina was selected for Modern Healthcare's list of 100 most powerful people in healthcare in 2009, and as one of the 50 experts leading the field in patient safety by Becker's Hospital Review in 2013. She received a scholarship to the American Hospital Association National Patient Safety Foundation, Patient Safety Leadership Training, where she developed the Healthcare Equality Project to study the needs of vulnerable populations. A board member of the National Patient Safety Foundation from 2002 through 2017, Ilene co-chaired the Patient and Family Advisor Council from 2002 to 2006. In 2002, she spearheaded the first Patient Safety Awareness Week. Ilene has authored 2 books, Teaching Patient Safety, An Educator's Guide, and Rants of a Patient Safety Advocate. She has appeared as a patient safety expert on many news shows and has been quoted in articles in many newspapers and magazines. Presently, Ilene is leading a team creating the Take Charge campaign, 5 steps for safer healthcare, and has developed a program to train ambassadors to share the program. And it is our pleasure to welcome Ilene to our show. Thank you.
Nice to connect with you, Ilene. We can't wait.
Thank you.
Judy, how did you connect with Ilene?
Actually, through Linda, who
that's right. That's right. Linda was our last guest on a show, which was an extraordinary show. It really went in other directions, that show, and she's going to come back.
And she was the crisis planner.
Yes.
Give her a plug, Linda Fosdick, the crisis planner.
Yeah. So, Ilene, I just want to get some back history on you, like to figure out what led you to this position? Like what was your upbringing? Was there any type in this work done in your family? And, how did you get to where you are?
Well, I'll tell you that, interestingly enough, this is not my background at all. I worked for the post office for 20 years.
Wow.
My youngest son, I'll just give you how this happened, but my youngest son, who was born severely premature, he's 29 years old now. He's a chef in Ohio. I'm very proud of him. Needed surgery. He needed surgery. And I went looking for the doctor that I wanted to choose to do the surgery, and found that there was really no information on doctors' backgrounds. And it was very important to me to have that information because just a few years earlier, my firstborn son had a tonsillectomy. And following his tonsillectomy, he was bleeding for a week until he died 8 days later.
Oh,
my God.
During that time, I went to 5 different hospitals and doctors, and each one of the nurses and doctors in each place I went, including the surgeon, said, "Don't worry, he's fine." So now I was in a position, I had another child who's 30 years old now, and then my very premature child needed surgery. And each time I went to a doctor, because we still need to go to doctors, I found I needed to know something. How are we choosing doctors? Being a nice guy or a nice person just didn't seem to cut it. So there was legislation pending in New York State to get information on our doctor's background. And I followed the team that was working on this and spent a lot of time in Albany. It took us quite a few years, but we did get this legislation passed that there is a website, newyorkdoctorprofile.com, that you can get information on your doctor's background if they report it. It's all self-reporting, but it's a step to a conversation with the clinician, whether it's a doctor or you decide you want to use a nurse practitioner because you can't find a doctor. We encourage people to keep searching, but it is just for physicians, this website, and it's a tool. It's not a an answer to the patient safety problem in this country, but it is a tool to use to empower people. And to get this legislation passed, we started a support group for survivors of medical injury, people who experienced similar issues that I did. And we started in a church in Freeport, the South Nassau Unitarian Universalist Congregation. They allowed us to meet there monthly. People came from Connecticut, New Jersey by train. It's near a train station. And we found that when we talked about the bad outcomes that happened, we could learn from each other.
Right.
And that was my concern, is that nobody ever asked me what happened and how things could have been done different. And why did he die? What did I miss? And I liked his doctor. It wasn't that I was angry at his surgeon. I was angry that we were never able to talk again about what happened. So that's my history of how we got started. And then I found that.
Well, that explains it. I'm glad that we talked about that, because that's just your authenticity of why it's so passionate to you really comes from that. And we want to say to you, we're so sorry about the loss of your child. I mean, we can't even imagine what you've gone through. So we're really, our hearts are with you. Did you work with Andrew Rea?
I don't know who that is.
Because he was
A
in
legislator in Northport.
Well, he used to work.
A
Yeah,
past-
in the past, he was part of the health work in I forget his exact title, but he used to work in Albany with the Congress with the
State Senate.
yeah.
Well, we worked with everybody that was willing, but it wasn't a warm and fuzzy time for us because there was, I never said it was about good or bad doctors. The people I worked with, many of them said we need to screen out bad doctors. And we have to remember that even if your doctor has no lawsuits recorded, or we don't know what's pending, and we don't know how many times mistakes have been made. So our focus, we're on our 25th year, and our focus has always been that the public needs to know where errors happen so that we could be part of the conversation, that we can't be left out and left to be, go into a hospital or a doctor's office and just say, take care of me. I'm not going to tell you what I know, what's wrong with me, because I have no clue. I don't know my medications. We want people to be part of the conversation and even know that these mistakes happen. Healthcare professionals are human and they make errors, just like car accidents. Errors are made. Doesn't mean that they're bad people, but we as patients and our family members must be more involved in our care so that we could speak up.
Yeah, and that's why social media, but there are platforms on the internet where credible testimonials come from. You got to also do your research on where you're getting your information, but there are locations. And do you know of any of those types of locations that people can go to research or to get testimonials?
Well, I think if you look at Google, Google testimonials, some people love it, some people hate it. So, because you can have a bad day, you can have a good day. And some doctors that I really don't like, other people love and want to use them. So it's a very personalized situation. The websites to get credible information, I look for .gov, government websites, because that's where they're putting the information out there. So if you go onto the CDC, that's where you can learn that 99,000 people die from hospital-acquired infections each year in hospitals. So if all these people are dying and 1 out of every 25 patients will get a hospital-acquired infection, well, thank you for that information. Who's making sure that they're washing their hands and that things are done appropriately? What are the standards of care that we as patients should be aware of so that we're not one of those statistics? Thank you for the statistics. Now, what are we supposed to do about it? And that's what we're not getting. And that's what we do at Pulse, is help people understand what they could be doing. And remember, people who work in healthcare, many of them have lost family members too, and have been have experienced poor medical outcomes. So it's not a us versus them situation. This is anybody that is vulnerable entering the healthcare system.
Yeah. And it's funny because, not funny, but I remember having this conversation with, what's the name of the other gentleman that was on the show, Judy? I'm drawing a blank. He is in government as well.
We had Rob Trotta. We had Michael Fitzpatrick.
Michael Fitzpatrick. I remember talking to him. We've had conversations about, the insurance determining the outcome and budgets. I mean, that's what it came down to. It's all a budget. And the truth is that we don't want, it's not, like you said, it's not us against them. We just want to figure out a conversation about how we could help each other to make people's recoveries better, to the best that it could be. So, we get it. It's like a conversation. I totally appreciate it's not you against them. You just want to start the conversation to be able to educate people, because people have to make their own decisions in life. So it really is very true.
Yeah, and we want people to have these conversations and not be afraid of them. Every time that there is, when you hear somebody talk about, I went to the hospital and my sprain turned into a broken leg, it wasn't a sprain, then that's a misdiagnosis. Or I went and had they said that not to worry about this bruise, and then it got infected, and nobody told me about it. Or my X-ray showed that my lungs were fine, but it turned into a pneumonia. Those are all areas that we are facing as misdiagnosis or medical errors, but we're not talking about them. Famous people have been misdiagnosed. When we think about Fran Drescher's misdiagnosis for years of her cancer, although her conversation is about her cancer, which is really important, could we step back a little bit and talk about her misdiagnosis of cancer for years that she's not talking about? How do we avoid that from happening? And let's talk about it. But
my question to you is, because I don't know that story, my question to you is, did she keep pushing to find the right diagnosis? Because that's where the people come in. That's where your advocate comes in, right? Because I am not a medical expert. I mean, I don't know anything about medicines. But my sister was very educated. She is very smart in the medical field. So whenever I went into the hospital, especially after my stroke, she would be on them. She wanted to know. She wanted answers. She was not stopping because it was a doctor talking to her. She wanted answers. And when you don't get them, you need to find someone that's going to give them, or at least credibility to, or confirmations from other doctors that determined what you have. So it's crazy.
Right. And I have no clinical background. I have no medical background. And most of the board certified patient advocates are not allowed to give medical information or advice, even if they are medical professionals. If they're practicing as a board certified patient advocate, that's one of the rules. I don't need to have medical information if I'm at the patient's bedside. And that's the book that you mentioned, Rants of a Patient Safety Advocate, come from years of blogging at the bedside and sharing experiences of what I've actually witnessed. But the being at the bedside and having a patient not understand their doctor, I should not be relaying that information. Remember the game telephone? I should not be telling the patient what the doctor means. If the patient doesn't understand it, or I don't understand it, one of us has to say, it's usually going to be me, because they don't necessarily want to do it. Yeah. I don't understand you. And if you can't repeat it back, there's something called teach back that clinicians have learned that we have to teach the public to know about. Let me tell you what I heard you say. And we actually use it like a recipe. If I can't repeat back the recipe to you, it's not going to come out the same. Right. So in our training, we train families and advocates. We use that scenario that if I'm repeating to you something and I leave out something in the ingredients, we're not going to understand it. So if I forget something that the doctor said, then I'm not going to get the right diagnosis or the right information or the right treatment because I missed something. So we want people, the advocate or the family member, to say, I want to repeat back what I heard you say. And they're supposed to ask you that. They're supposed to say, tell me what you heard me say. Yeah. So we have that conversation. I don't need to be a nurse or a doctor to take the place of the people there who are treating the patient. And if you can't have that conversation, it might not be the best nurse or doctor for you.
No, I totally agree. So let's, because I know this is an important point for you. Let's talk about the Take Charge campaign, because I actually see it on your wall in the back. Is it on your wall in the back?
It is.
Yes. So let's
all over my room.
Yeah. I mean, where'd that come from? Well, how did that journey begin?
Well, it actually began in the end of 2019 with a different 5 steps, but it was taking the studies and research that we know of that says, here's what you can do to improve your outcomes as a patient. And it's very scattered, and it might be a lot of information, but if you boil it all down, we found that there's these 5 steps that we read about, that the government has read, that studies have done, and that are out there. And the 5 steps are, the step number 1 is keep a list of your medical records and your medication. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Step number 2 is prepare for your doctor visit or hospitalization with your list of questions and symptoms. Step number 3 is prepare for, the first one, I'm sorry. The first one is understand your and complete your healthcare advanced directives, which is the healthcare proxy. So number 1 is prepare that healthcare proxy before you go into the hospital, because when you go in the hospital, they're going to hand you a form and say, who's going to speak for you when you can't speak for yourself. And I would love RenéMarie to talk to you more about that. But step number 2 is prepare with your medical or have a list of your medications and medical history. Step number 3 is prepare for your doctor visit with your questions and symptoms. They have something called a doorknob question. You as the doctor puts their hand on the doorknob, the patient comes up with all their questions. So you want to
right.
prepared, right? You want to go prepared with the questions. Step number 4 is help avoid infections. Have caregivers wash their hands, and that means the patient too. Everybody should be washing their hands. It's a cause of infection, and it's a policy. Healthcare professionals need to wash their hands before touching the patient, not necessarily when they walk in the room and then touch everything that you've touched and your family's touched and everybody else has touched, before they touch the patient. And step number 5 is be an advocate and advocate for others. And whatever that means to you, it could mean, or we can help people through that. So those are the 5 steps. And it's actually a campaign that starts in March with Patient Safety Awareness Week, which is the second week of March, where we kick off all the 5 steps. And then April, we do only advanced directives. May, we do this step 2. And this is what we do until September. We close it out on Patient Safety Day, World Health Organization Patient Safety Day. But right now we're in step 3, prepare for your doctor visit. So you would hear a lot of, or hopefully social media, and we'll be doing programs, and there's presentations on the 5 steps. So each month is a different step. And that's where it came from. It's out there, and it really does help people understand what is patient safety. And being responsible as a patient or somebody who's going to be a patient. It's not, we don't want people who are in the hospital. We don't want people who are already sick. We want the people who are on the outside who may become patients. Like you get a driver's license. You don't get a driver's license after you've been driving for a year.
Right.
You get a driver's license, and then you could drive. We should be helping people prepare to be a patient before they ever enter the healthcare system. And we start in middle school. We start in high schools.
Wow, that's extraordinary. That's what that's one thing that my foundation always stresses, to really prepare yourself. Like you practice, like softball. You have to practice, you have to learn, and don't wait until those days where you're in the hospital and you have to make quick decisions, because quick decisions could really be very, and not end in a good way. You have to learn all this stuff prior. So that's really wonderful that you guys go to schools to educate the children. Is this do you only offer this to locals, or do you do this online, or just so we can educate, the country? Anybody can reach out to you and educate their students, because that is a great start. And I'm thinking that we should connect Ilene to Marlon, because Marlon has the college. We have a partner that Next Chapter, I think his foundation is called. And they're college students that when they finish graduating, they said to ourselves, what are we going to do? What are we going to do to make a difference? And Marlon is in the health field. So it'd be wonderful to connect you to Marlon, because we need to educate the children. We need to educate.
I'll do that for you Monday.
Yeah, because that would be extraordinary. We want to work to make sure all the children, all the, young adults in the world start to pattern their brains to that information.
And not only that, the Take Charge campaign was done with public health students from Hofstra University.
Oh.
And without them realizing, when I talk to parents or adults, they don't realize that when their child is 18 years old, that they can't automatically speak for them if they're unconscious in a hospital. It's not automatic. So 18 years old, a lot of parents say, well, I'm paying for their college. That has nothing to do with it. And that happened to me when my youngest son flipped his car over a few times in the middle of the country, when he's fine, thank God. But when I called the hospital, they would not talk to me until they found him, and he had to call me. So it was a real eye opener. So not only having this healthcare proxy filled out, my kids carried it in their wallet, and I have a copy, but also the idea that it's not, you don't need an attorney for this. You need probably 2 witnesses. Most forms have a place for 2 witnesses. You don't need it notarized. And it is something that when you go into the hospital, they're going to ask your 18-year-old child, do you have a healthcare proxy? Who could speak for you when you...
I have to interrupt for a second. What do you mean by carry it in your wallet. I mean, it's several pages long.
Not necessarily, because what I have or what we carry is the name of the person. And that person,
that's different.
yes, that person needs the details. So if I have something that says, look, I am my child's healthcare proxy, I want to talk to the doctor, then we can have that conversation. And the patient's wishes are what I need separately. I need to know what the patient's wishes are.
So what kind of document should be in your wallet? Because why are they going to believe you if you have something small in your wallet? I don't understand.
Well, in our case, we have on our website, it's a piece of paper, 8.5 by 11, that you print out, and it has who your healthcare proxy is, and you sign it, they sign it, and you have 2 witnesses.
Oh, okay.
The name and the phone number of the person, and everybody signs it, and it can be updated and changed as often as you want. And again, it's not a power of attorney. It's not, it's not a will. It's something that anybody could do, because if you go into the emergency room or you're wheeled into surgery, you're going to be asked to fill that out. And
it's a good idea, Ilene, to bring your formal copy as well, so that they have it on file. You're going into the hospital, bring it.
Yeah, if you have it, absolutely. Absolutely. So planning to be a patient is huge, to be doing that. And a lot of times, though, it's emergency rooms and you may not have it. But if you have a list of medication, your healthcare proxy could be there with you. Yes.
Wow, that's very interesting. Because what I'm getting from what you're saying to us is, it doesn't take a lot to do this. And all you need to do is download that form that's on yours, have 2 people sign it, which you have people around you, and you'll be protected. Right. I mean, you don't need to go to an attorney. You don't need to get it notarized. Although, would notification from a notary add some credibility to it?
It could, but then if you update it, really, there's not a notary when you're going into surgery, and they
right.
active information. If you look at a hospital packet, it's going to be a healthcare proxy form in there, and 2 strange nurses could sign it for you also. So you have that. It is really the most important thing is the conversation that you have with the person you're choosing. So if I don't want to be on life support, a lot of young people, and whenever we have interns, I have them read the story on Terry Schiavo and Karen Ann Quinlan. Now, I don't know if you remember those stories.
I remember that.
The young people don't know about them, and they were in their 20s. Those were young women. So I always have them read those stories first and get acquainted with those 2 women and their experience of not having a healthcare proxy and the legal battle that their family went through because of it. And it's on the Take Charge website.
Okay.
Quinlan was on life support. Wasn't she in a coma for like 20 years?
I remember that. Yes.
Yep. And that's the idea, is that you don't know. Is that what you want? Is that it could be your wishes could be, send me to this hospital, not this hospital. I want long-term rehab. I don't want to be on a ventilator. And during COVID, think of all the people that were on vents that couldn't speak for themselves. And if they didn't have anybody who could speak for them of what their wishes were or knowledge about what their hopes were for getting, rehab or how long they're willing to be on a vent, these people didn't have anybody speak for them. And legally, the doctors and nurses don't have to go to anybody. They could just be making their choices on their own. Although I want to be fair and say that most times healthcare professionals will go to the family and talk to the family. But if you don't trust your family, I've seen too many times families are in war.
Yeah.
I've walked into that as an advocate, and where the healthcare professionals said, Ilene, run from this case. You don't want this case. What I'm trying to do is keep peace in the families and know this is more than you realize. So,
but I want to stress that we should have healthcare proxies prior all the time. You should have one healthcare proxy, because at least you're protecting yourself. Now, if you, I got a question for you, Ilene. If you have a healthcare proxy, and you say you're going for surgeries and the healthcare proxy person is not going to be available, can you write one up just for the operation, or So answer.
You can. Yeah, I've been with people who are that I don't know, and I, as a patient advocate, have been with them, and I've been their healthcare proxy because they didn't have anybody that they wanted to. But I actually sign it and through surgery. I don't want to be their healthcare proxy forever. If they don't change it, don't call me. I don't know you in a year. I don't want to hear from you in a year if that's our relationship.
Right.
But you, as a patient advocate, also, I have the phone number of the healthcare proxy. So I don't need to necessarily, they don't need to be, they could be on another part of the country. And there's also a backup. So you have one and then the other. So you want only one first because wars could break out if there's two, but you have one and then the other. And that would be how you would figure it out.
Right.
But in most cases, the first person is appropriate, and a friend or family member who is with the patient at the surgery, or the doctors can have it, know who to call, because a lot of this could be done on the phone now and through Zoom.
And I have another question for you. If you have two people on a healthcare proxy, do both need to agree to the decision moving forward? Do both?
Definitely.
Does a doctor need to get consent from both, or can one of them determine?
I don't know of any forums that have both listed. It's usually first and second.
Okay.
The first choice and the first person cannot be reached. And, somebody could be in surgery. They find that something is going on in surgery. They have to call to make a decision right then and there. If you can't reach somebody, they have to go to the second one, or they would go to the second one.
Okay.
So you wouldn't have two.
But to have two together could be a major problem.
Exactly. My family jokes about, I would want to keep my parents alive forever. And my sister would just say, we're done, get the jewelry. We joke about that because
that happens.
Absolutely happens. Absolutely. It's no joke to some families.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen.
Eileen, with my dad, who had a massive stroke, the doctor wanted to put in a feeding tube. It was the only way to save him. My brother was totally against it. In fact, my brother got the family together to be totally against it. However, I was the healthcare proxy person, and I was the one in state that was going to be taking care of my dad. And even if he was in the hospital, I was the one that was going to be overseeing it. And my husband totally supported whatever decision I was making. And I made the right decision. He lived 3 years and 3 months longer. My brother said he wouldn't want to live like this, paralyzed. And my brother would have just stopped everything.
So you're a perfect example, Judy. You should give us a testimonial, because that's exactly the point. He chose you because he trusted you, and you lived through the experience of what we're trying to promote.
And what's kind of unique about the whole thing is that years later, my brother was in a situation where he was paralyzed, and he was going to do everything he could do to stay alive.
Wow. Yeah. So you have the firsthand experience of what we're talking about. Thank you for sharing that.
Wow. I want to go back to something though, what you're talking about, because I wrote down wash hands. You said that doctors don't need to wash their hands prior to getting into the room, but it would be much clearer if they did wash their hands in front of you to make sure. And I remember
it would give you comfort. It would give you comfort that he did or she did.
Yeah, because I remember like I think all the doctors that I've ever gone to, especially my children's doctor, when they walked in the room, that's the first thing they did was wash their hands. Are there sinks in the hospital rooms?
Well, there should be, and in most cases we expect that. There's also the antibacterial that works in most cases.
Okay.
It's not that they should not wash their hands when they walk in the room, but the idea is when I'm with a patient and I watch, they go to the keyboard, or, a computer, or they're touching a clipboard, and even if we watch on the shows on TV, I watch how many things they touch before they touch the patient. I have a photograph of a nurse pushing the bed rail up. It was a simulation where the nurse is pushing the bed rail up after washing and putting on gloves. And when I took the picture, his face isn't in it, but I showed him the picture. I said, "What's wrong with this picture?" He said, "I don't know." I said, you know, 3 family members touched that bed to raise that bed for the patient before you touched it. So now all the disinfectant that you used to stay safe, you just ruined
Undid.
by raising the bed without washing your hands before touching the patient. So it is an exaggeration, but I really believe that hand washing is more about respect and trust than it is about the germs. If you wash your hands before you touch me, you're showing me respect.
Right.
And when you show me that respect, I can trust you because you're doing not only what you're supposed to do, but you're watching out for my safety. And that's
Right.
really what we want. We want that relationship.
Wow. No. So let's talk about the Pulse Center. Let's talk about that. I mean, how do people get in touch with you? What I mean, so let's talk about that.
Okay, we're virtual. We don't have an office. We've grown nationally the last 2 years. Obviously, I didn't expect to grow that big that fast. We have 3 free programs a month. The first Wednesday is our PAC, Patient Activation through Community Conversations. It's having a very general conversation about being a patient. So somebody can come there and say, I want to talk about a healthcare proxy, or I want to talk about a doctor being in my gynecologist's office. Do I need a nurse in there? Or I didn't like my breast exam. What are other people doing? So comparing notes about being a patient. And we do some case studies. We do some sharing of actual stories. The first.
Can I ask something before you continue? Where do we find those online videos? And can we, like when they're up, can we share them to our social media?
These programs are live. These are all live programs. I will tell you that we do have an academy, Patient Advocate Academy. It's on our website, Pulse Center for Patient Safety.org. Our 3 programs a month are listed. They're all free. Board certified patient advocates can get continuing education for a small fee of $20. And those are on our academy. They're recorded and put on our academy. We do not tape our PAC. We don't tape our PPS, our People for Patient Safety, so people could talk openly and not have any fear of what they're going to say. We ask for people to not share. There are rules. We're not allowed to give advice. People at Pulse are not allowed to give advice. I can't tell you what you should do. I can tell you what worked for me. We don't want to hear what you should do. You should tell your doctor to wash your hands. Well, I'm not telling the doctor to wash my hands. You know, let's not get into that conversation.
Right.
Here's how I did it. This is what works for me. So that's one of the rules. Also, we don't ask questions that are not appropriate. If somebody shares that somebody died, we're not going to go off into asking them how they died. If they want to share that, they will share that. Or you can ask permission to share. And these are all part of advocacy and support caregiver skills that we're learning as we move forward.
And it's a very positive way to approach it.
Yeah, and we want people to feel very safe in our programs. So we have an ACEs program, which is going to be which is always the 4th Monday of the month, and that's a speaker and then a case studies, and then our PPS, People for Patient Safety. We break out into small groups and have a topic that we could talk about. So now that we're national, it's really it's become very active, and I just love what we're doing. The first Monday of each month, if people are interested in Take Charge, people can come and hear what's happening and talk about Take Charge and what they want to do to get involved. So people can become ambassadors and do the presentation. They could be involved in Take Charge by speaking about it and helping us get presentation people to present to.
Wow.
So there's a lot going on.
I know, that's very exciting. So if you could, well, Judy, what's going through my mind is we could share when the academy is on, right? We can and how do they, is it done via Zoom? Is it done so that they'll have to register for?
Yes.
They have to register for the website.
The Academy holds all our videos. I think there's like 26 or 27 videos there now, and there is a fee for those. If people really can't afford it, they want it, we will help. We're not looking to make money on this, but the other programs are all listed by date where you would go into just Pulse programs. And then we have our Healthcare Equality Project, which is working with vulnerable populations. advocating for people who are, which I'd love to talk to you about, people who've had stroke, how we could work together. But working with people who have had lupus, the transgender community, people who have disabilities, mothers who are in shelters. So there's a lot of different groups we've worked with. That's all listed: Alzheimer's and dementia, and homeless people, and all that's listed there. The group work that we've done with these groups for 10 years, that was part of my fellowship, and some expertise there. We have people who are pretty involved in that. And then we have our One is a Number, which is another page that has statistics that show the statistics of deaths and injuries due to medical errors and mistakes, because we get a lot of people that call and say, where do I get some of this information from? So we store it on our website.
Wow. You said let's focus on the strokes, because you said you pulled some information about the stroke information.
I did. And I don't know if people realize that there's so many misdiagnoses from stroke. In tens of thousands of Americans each year, a large number of them visit to the emergency room, have dizziness and headaches, and are sent home. That they're actually strokes. The statistics that one is 108 from 187,000 patients from 1,000 hospitals. They found that 12.7% of people later admitted for stroke had been potentially misdiagnosed and erroneously sent home from an ER. Now, it wasn't a stroke, but my son was sent home from 5 different emergency rooms until he died. So these are things that, go ahead.
I want to hop in, because I think when you capture the moment, this is the moment when we like to talk about knowing the signs. That everybody should know the signs, because if somebody is having some of those symptoms, showing some of them, when you call the hospital, you should tell them it could possibly be a stroke, because the be fast. They could be experiencing some of the be fast, because that way it leads the way in their determination. And then the advocacy person should be aware that this is what's happening. So from the onset, we know that it could be. We're not doctors. We're not saying we're doctors. We're just saying that we saw that they are experiencing some of the be fast, and you need to pay close attention to that. So I just wanted to make sure that we kept.
And let's tell the audience what be fast stands for.
That was my question. Going to be my question.
Yeah, Judy.
B stands for balance. If your balance is off. E, if something is wrong with your eyes, something unusual, something that's not normal for you. Fast. F, face. If your face is distorted, if your face is drooping, if you stick your tongue out and it's crooked, anything to do with your face. Your arms, if you cannot put both arms out straight, if one of them is drooping. S, if the speech is off, if it's garbled. And T is for time. Time is of the essence. I mean, you've got to take care of it immediately. And there are other signs too. There are a killer headache, can be a sign of a stroke. That was the sign my dad had. A hemorrhagic stroke was occurring, which is a bleed in the brain. If you have a horrendous headache, you must go to the hospital and mention it. I've also read that anyone who's laughing for no reason or crying for no reason could be a sign.
I also think it's important that if people have any of this or just feel like it might be a stroke, they leave and go someplace else and share their concern. Yeah. Because it could be, you can have a brand new doctor in the emergency room who has no clue, and they could make a mistake. We want to make sure those mistakes are captured before there's an injury.
Yeah.
And you should insist if you've, let's say you have any of these signs, or you have a horrendous headache or something, tell them, I want an MRI, I want a CAT scan, I want an MRA. These are the tests I want you to do now.
Yeah. When my daughter was very young, my daughter Samantha, she had asthma, and she went to the doctors and they said, oh, she's okay. I said, she's not okay. I know my daughter, she's not okay. She needs to have a chest x-ray. now. She needs, I was like very adamant about knowing my daughter. She needs to, well, her lungs were filled.
Wow.
And if I didn't demand, she had pneumonia. If I didn't demand that they do a chest x-ray, things could have not gotten any better. Something terrible could have happened.
And that's exactly what I said earlier on.
Right.
You live through a misdiagnosis, but by not sharing it, the next person might die because they don't know to insist on a chest x-ray.
Yeah.
And you saved your daughter. The other way could have been where she would have died and we would have been talking about something completely different.
Yeah.
That's the piece that we're
And
trying.
also, if you don't like the doctor or what the doctor is saying about your loved one, you can fire them. For instance, I met the doctor that was supposed to be the neurologist who was supposed to be seeing my dad, and his answer to me was, "There's nothing you can do. He's got this bleed in his brain. He's going to die either today or in a few days. There's nothing you can do." I said, "Yes, there is something I can do. You're fired."
Yeah. So, I mean, let's recap, Eileen and Judy. I think the most important thing is that as the patient or advocate, we have the right to change our minds. We have the right to choose another hospital. We have the right, I mean, once things are stable, we're going through that with my granddaughter now. She suffers some seizures, and she lives away. Her hospital she is attending isn't in the general area. It's not the first hospital that she will be taken to. So we had to make sure that they understood that this is something that she needs. This is the hospital she needs to go to. I say that because the one caveat is if it's an emergency and it's life and death, you do need to go to the nearest hospital. That being said, once things stabilize, you have the right to choose for the advocate or your healthcare proxy people or whoever it is to determine where you want to be moved to and what you want to do for your best interest, for your recovery.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And it could cost because remember, we are talking about insurance. You want your insurance to work with you, but even if the insurance doesn't work, we could, that's where your advocate might come in and be able to help. There's ways around everything.
Yeah. And that's what's important about what you do, because we used to have a friend named Tracy Lawrence, who actually passed away this year. And I can't believe she's not with us. She would say that, like, there's so much information out there. There's so much information out there. You just gotta pursue it. You just have to keep asking the questions. You just have to keep researching. You can't just sit back and let the professionals or the doctors and the nurses and the management at the hospital determine what's going to happen to you. You need an advocate. That is so important, to have an advocate, because an advocate's working for you, not for the hospital.
And the other thing we do that I want people to know is very important is that we don't charge for our advocacy services, because we focus on working with the whole family. A lot of people don't realize that they have support, but they don't want to ask them. They don't want to bother them. We'll pull that group together so that when somebody's going into the hospital, they don't need to make those phone calls. When you're sick or dealing with something, you don't want to have to start calling insurance. We will pull your team together and work with your team as well as the patient. So that's what our focus is. And we're all volunteers. Mm-hmm. So it's important to know that.
And the other thing is, I know that hospitals are changing their thought patterns on how to deal with patients and families. They're including the families in the conversation. I remember when someone was at Valley, and I remember when my father especially was in Hackensack University. I would be there 24/7. I would go to leave at 11 and come back at 6 a.m. And they invited me to be part of the conversation about the case. Like when people came, I was part of so I knew exactly what's going on. And the truth is, I'm not very medical, like I said, but being involved and hearing all that kind of stuff, you get to know what's going on, even if they spoke in a language that I understood, and they made sure they spoke in a language that I understood, which is, very, very, credible to them.
Yes, that's
Incredible.
great. We got to remember though, to always encourage them to ask the patient if they want this family member there. I follow people in all the time and I say, could you ask them before I go in if they want me there? Because
Right.
it's courtesy. They ask next when I'm standing there, they'll ask, are you being abused at home? And I'm saying, could you ask that when I leave? Because I might be the abuser. Why are you asking that when the
Right.
bedside?
Right.
So we want to make sure that the patient is still in charge. And as a patient's advocate or family member, we want to always make sure that if they can answer the question, they answer the question, whether they're 10 years old or 100 years old. We want to keep them in charge as best as possible. So it keeps the clinicians on ball, that we're there to support them, not to take over.
That's, we all want to do the right, we all want to do the best for the patient, and I do want to say that, in not a defense, but just I want to note that, like you said, this is not about us against them with the doctors or the nurses or the technicians or whoever it is. But some aren't stroke specialists, some aren't cancer specialists, some aren't, so they're learning, through the process, they're learning. So we as the family members or the advocates need to just be aware of that. We need to just make sure that we're taking everybody and working and being not bipartisan, but just be the what's that word I'm looking for? Being the calm one through the storm, making sure that they hear everything and they're handling things in the right way. I know that you're a professional advocate, but I'm talking about families and like my sister was my advocate when I was in the hospital. She was my advocate. So I'm just saying that all advocates should be clear-minded and really handle things in a very diplomatic and very professional way, so that they could make the right decisions for their loved ones.
Right. Yeah. We want to make sure that they are treated respectfully also. And again, keeping the patient in charge is very helpful to being an advocate. And those of anybody watching that says, I could be anybody's advocate, I'm a great patient, that they're a great patient advocate. Think of who their advocate will be. Do you have an advocate when you're ready to be hospitalized? Who will be your helper? And family members or friends may say, I'll clean the bathroom after surgery. Don't offer to clean somebody's bathroom. Offer to do a fundraiser to hire somebody to clean the bathroom. You want to cook, you want to help out, make sure that you're invited and that you're welcome, because there's people that patients don't like in the family. They could be a heavy smoker. There could be somebody who doesn't pay attention, who talks too much. They might not be the best advocate. So we want to choose ahead of time, just like the healthcare proxy. Choose your advocate ahead of time, who that might be.
So we're at an hour. I do want to give you the opportunity, Ilene, to state whatever it is that you think should recap, and we would like to invite you back, because I believe this conversation needs to keep going, so that we could just educate people and just really support them along the process. So
I'd love to be back, and people want to reach us, they can call us. And actually in my email, iCorina@pulsecenterforpatientsafety.org. We are a nonprofit organization. We look for volunteers and support. We're always looking to partner with other organizations that want our information as part of what they're teaching. And there's, of course, no charge for that. We just want to reach more people, because if you're an active patient and advocate in the health system, it's going to be easier for me and my family. So this is the new, the way things have to be, and we have to move forward with this.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really a blessing to meet you, and for the education, that you're providing to everybody. And your story is very touching and very moving. And I think that it draws a lot of, credibility. I don't want to say that's the wrong word associated to the reason why you do this, but we all have a purpose in life. And we sometimes we have to take those lemons and turn them into some lemonade, like I did with my stroke,
Absolutely.
So we're very blessed to have met you. Thank you, Judy, so much for doing this, and would love to have her back. Maybe her and Linda can come on together. So
Yes.
we can continue this conversation, because Linda is going to come back on. I forget what we were going to talk about with Linda. There was
That's in my notes, which
Yeah.
are in another room.
Oh, okay. But there was a topic because Linda was talking about something, and I said, "Oh, I think it's in the silence. It's in the silence when we all chatter and we all talk all the time." But Linda believes, like I believe, that when you go into the silence and you sit and you're in the silence, there's a whole different world of volume there, whole different world there. So we look forward to talking to her about that. But we can always do another show with Linda. And I mean,
And
it's
she's a
very
great
good.
friend, Linda. If you're talking about Linda Fostick,
Yes.
Yes.
very good friend to us. She's been wonderful. Support.
Yeah. She had a wonderful story too. So it's very important. All right. So we always blow our kisses, and thank you so much for joining us. Happy Father's Day, Jim. Happy Father's Day to everybody in the world. And fathers, I mean, I believe fathers and mothers, yes, you can be their birth father and mother, but you can also be a father in very many other ways, and a mother in any other ways. So to all those that have been some type of father and some type of mother, sometimes a mother has to be a father as well, and sometimes a father has to be a mother as well. So blessings to you, and we hope you have a wonderful day and enjoy the day. Jim, thank you for all you do for us. We love having you. So on 3, we always blow our kisses. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Bye, everybody. See you next week. See you in 2 weeks. Bye.